Go. We are live, indeed. Good evening, everyone. My name is Simon Misiewicz, and with me tonight we have some other members of the Property Expert Panel. And we're going to be taking your questions about property investing or property development. So what I want to do first is share my screen, because there is something that is worth sharing with you all, and that is 30th birthday. It's not 30 years, albeit Tim looks like he's been around a bit. What I will say to you is that this is our 30th show. So if you can put in some congratulations and give us a like, because this is 30th show that we've done. So if you could press that like button, that'd be very much appreciated. So there you go, 30th show. Can you believe it? So this is the Property Expert Panel. I'm going to go in and let everyone else introduce themselves. But before I do that, there is a checklist. So if you haven't done so already, feel free to download that checklist from the description box below this video and get that for free. So without further ado, let's introduce panel members. I am Simon Misiewicz. I am a property tax specialist in the UK and in the US. So if you're into real estate property investing and you want the right tax structure, then make sure you contact me. Teresa's not here, but let's get over to you, Tim.
Hello, Simon. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Tim.Bishop from Bronwen. As you can see from the logo, we are solicitors who really understand property investors. I own a law firm with about 65 staff, and we have a specialist property investor team who really understand investors, because I think certainly that a lot of conveyancers don't, and I think a lot of delays for that reason. We also have a highly specialist leasehold team who specialise in lease extension, possibly the largest team of its type in the country. I'm also an investor, as are most of the panel. And certainly I've got HMO, commercial conversion, SA under my belt, and I'm finally trying to finish off possibly the slowest SaaS purchase ever. That's a small office. I'm trying, hopefully within the next few weeks, to finally get into my SaaS, my family small self-administered scheme, a pension scheme, to get that up and running. So that's Tim.Bishop, Bronwen. Over now to Simon Hodgson.
All right, sure. Well, before you do that, let's go to
Ross.
We've got to go to Ross first.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ross Maynard. For my sins, I spent the last 35 years in construction. So I'm here tonight to answer any building related questions you got. We've got some already come in, which I'm looking forward to answering. My day job, I run a property maintenance and refurbishment business, working solely with investors, landlords, letting agents. I'm also an investor. I've got a SaaS pension. I've got buy-to-lets, etc., etc., etc.
And now over to Simon Hodgson.
Oh, there we go. Look, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, my name's Simon Hodgson. My company is funded. We do buy-to-let, mortgages for anything that you've got that's investment. I've been involved in property for over 20 years. Currently investing in property. Here to provide a view of that end of the market and how it is ebbing and flowing at the moment.
And last but certainly not least, Bronwen.
Well, I hope Teresa's going to be joining us very shortly. But yes, I'm Bronwen Vearncombe. I'm a property investor down in Hampshire in the south of England. I invest in houses of multiple occupation, holiday lets, guest houses, and I've also done a number of conversions and small developments. But the most important thing, and why I'm here today, is to be with my expert panel here, all the people that have helped me along the way. It's really about teaching and helping support other people. So I have an online program of learning, which is modular, but I also coach and support and mentor people in investing. So yes, I've got lots of different strategies. I also have a SaaS pension as well, and I think there may even be a question on that today. So fire away, get those questions in the question box, because we always run out of time, don't we, everybody? But Teresa's not made it, so I think we'll just have to crack on, Simon.
Yeah. So I'll stop that share for now, but if anyone does have any questions, then as we've said, we will be answering those questions live. I do have a lot of questions that we have taken already for those people that have registered. So we'll start with Silas. Silas has asked, do you have a property inspection checklist, and how often does a landlord need to do an inspection if the property is managed by a tenant? And that's a fair question to the man with the golden nuggets, Ross Maynard. So Ross, do you have a checklist to start with? And should you do more inspections when you're using an agent?
Is it for me? It's more for Teresa, that one, I think, but she's not here.
Yeah.
I mean, my inspection checklist will be more about the initial view of a property. So I'm not sure if that's what Silas is asking, Simon. I think it was more related around the when the property's rented.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point, and I think there's two parts to that question. I think you're right. We could talk about the agents, and maybe we could all kind of club in together for that. But from Ross, from your perspective, from a checklist of a property in general speaking, when someone's buying a property, do you have a checklist for that you could share?
Oh yes, yeah. I've got a PDF that I use. I've also got an online thing that is part of my course. It literally takes you through everything, and it's a yes/no answer. It's based on the red, amber, greens that a surveyor would use. So yeah, happy to share that. I'll
send me that link, and I think that'll be worth sharing. But for anyone listening, if one of the panel members could do me a quick favour, well, there's Teresa now. Would you believe it? So
cool.
This is the red royal carpet for Teresa if she comes on board.
Yeah.
We'll hit her straight away with a question.
Yeah.
Teresa, you are live.
Yay! Brilliant.
Teresa, are you in the frame of mind of taking a quick question? Oh, she's off.
Clearly not.
That's answered that. Right, we might come back to that question. And
we do have a lot of fun on this panel, don't we? You know, so bear with us.
We do ad lib. Right, let's get to Sean. Yes. Showers. So you talk about showers. What type of showers? Anyone's guess. Let's go with Sean's showers here. I'm returning. If I'm returning a bathroom with a bath, should I turn it to a wet room, or if not, what good quality showers work well over baths? Any top tips?
Yes, lots of them.
Any top taps?
I think when I read that question, he's actually saying he's refurbing a bathroom, and does he want to change it into a shower room? So
yeah, a couple of things. Got wet room as well, though.
What are you going to do with the property? If you're going to sell it on, keep a bath. I've seen lots of people turn shower rooms or bathrooms into shower rooms and then regret it because they sell it to a mum, dad, 2 kids, and the kids want a bath, especially babies. They don't shower too well. The other thing, if you're fitting out a wet room for tenants, in my opinion, you're inviting trouble. Keep it very simple. Keep it a quadrant shower with a decent quality screen. Make sure it's tiled in properly. There's 3 bits to a shower installation to me. There's the physical putting the tray in, which should be sealed. There's the tiling of the walls, which should be a good waterproof adhesive. A lot of people make a lot of mistakes with that. And then a good waterproof grout on top. So get a really good tiler if you're going to do it. And then the silicone seal around the bottom, if you ever go into a shower and it's got a 2-foot thick silicone seal around the bottom, you know you're in trouble. If it's got a nice little tiny bead of no more than about 6 mil, then that's a well-installed shower. So quick refresh on that, because there's lots of information, lots of nuggets. If it's going to be sold, if you sell it on, then leave the bath in, put a bath back in, put a decent quality shower screen up, have a shower in the bath. If you're not, I wouldn't go down a wet floor route for tenants. You're inviting trouble. A lot of tenants are good and they'll look after the place, but those few that don't will cause you all sorts of problems and could end up flooding your bathroom and your house.
That's really good to know, actually. Simon, from a mortgage perspective, there's no issues in terms of doing different types of things with showers or converting them, or could that give a bit of a problem?
No, it shouldn't affect mortgageability. The thing that it does pop up where it's really useful to make a note of family bathroom, if you're creating an HMO that's less than 7 bedrooms and we're trying to get a higher valuation on the property and not use bricks and mortar, but get a hybrid commercial valuation, removing the family bathroom and having individual en-suites absolutely helps facilitate that, because it then can't be readily turned back into a family home without works. But other than that, no, it doesn't really affect things too much.
Very good. Okay, I'm just looking at a few questions from the guys on the live show. So feel free to type those questions in. Someone's asked about the previous shows. I have put a link in for all the previous shows that we've ever done. So if you want to look at that link and get the old shows, then feel free to do so. Obviously, this is our 30th show. So anyone that's joining late, this is happy birthday to Pep. Happy birthday to Pep. Happy birthday to Pep. So what I'm going to do is go to the next question in celebration of our 30th birthday. Sophie's asked about flooring. So we're going from showers now into flooring. Hopefully the water's not on the flooring. So let's go through this. If I'm replacing carpets, there we go, and there's a nice wooden floor, is it worth going underfloor heating and rugs, or are carpets just simpler? It's for a holiday let. That's a great question. I'm going to go to you, Ross, for the first of all, but then I'm going to go over to Bronwen and Tim, because both of you do holiday lets, and I'd be interested to see what your views are, especially in the UK. So Ross, take it away.
So I'm a great advocate of underfloor heating. Firstly, a wet system, which is where the water runs through pipes in the floor. I've got that in my own home. You can actually turn your boiler temperature down because it works more efficiently at sort of 55 degrees rather than having it whack right up like it would a boiler. I love underfloor heating. I've got electric underfloor heating. When you work that out, it's quite economical. There's also and something I've been learning with a couple of guys I'm working with at the moment who are Airbnb specialists. They love underfloor heating in the ensuite. When you get up in the night, it's a real pleasure to walk on a warm floor, especially for us gentlemen. Only
for good reason. Teresa's thinking. Look at Teresa's eyes.
The callback.
She's already thinking. There's some dirty comment about men can't hold their bladders. That's what she's thinking.
There's the callback factor. So when they're tweeting or putting on Instagram about this great place they're staying in, the underfloor heating always gets mentioned. So I'm a great advocate of it. It's really economical. If you can get it, holiday lets, you may be talking caravan type things. I hope you're not. It doesn't work too well on those. Quickly underfloor heating doesn't work fantastically well with wooden flooring because it doesn't dissipate the heat. The best thing for underfloor heating, a wet system particularly, is tiles, because the tile becomes like a small radiator and you get this lovely all-round heat right around the room rather than radiators. Sorry, I rushed that a bit at the end, but there's a lot of information to get out of that. It's one of my favourite topics.
Well, this isn't though, Ross, because I've seen you a lot more excited about. So
there's lots of my favourite topics coming up today, I think.
So, Bronwen, over to you.
Brilliant. So for a holiday let, it does depend what type of let you've got. If you allow animals, I'm sure the animals would love underfloor heating, but certainly if you have carpets, it's not a good idea downstairs if you're going to allow animals within a holiday let. So we do have a couple of holiday lets. One does have, it's all tiled floors. It's not wooden. I see they mention wood. So if wood doesn't work so well with underfloor heating, probably not worth doing it. But for me, it was, economies really. Make sure that you've got good heating ability, because that is really important. But if you're going to have animals, really good to not have carpets downstairs. And bathroom, yes, I think it's a really good idea to have it in the bathroom. Again, costs, I'm not sure, Ross, how much, how expensive it is if you've got to dig up the floor or whatever. That's the only danger.
You haven't got to dig it up these days. There's overlay systems which the pipework sits in. Just one other thing I was going to mention with the wet underfloor heating, where you've got water running through pipes in your floor. It's probably the most efficient way, should we ever go to air source heat pumps in this world, but it's the most efficient way of heating a house. And the idea would be underfloor heating with an air source heat pump rather than having radiators, etc.
Excellent. Any other comments?
Tim, you've got some finished holiday lets, haven't you?
Well, I suppose the most recent one is the one I'm doing up at the moment, just getting the building quotes in. Again, all the radiators are already there. So I think sometimes it's all very well having a perfect property, but actually if you've got something already there, often it simply doesn't pay to change everything. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can't say that. Let's get to another question. Claire has asked, what do the panel think about the new build and buying off plan in the current market. And I think it's worth just, we talked off air about the current market. Is it a good time to buy? So let's just go round the panel first of all and talk about current market conditions, and then talking about would you buy off plan. So let's start with you, Bronwen, on that, and then we'll go to Teresa and then follow around the gents.
You're going to like my answer to this, because that's why we have the panel, isn't it? You know, I really look forward to these events because I can hear what you guys have got to say about the market. Well, I mean, from my perspective, there are opportunities out there. There are landlords that are definitely offloading properties, usually the ones that are not quite so profitable for them. But also there are some that are really saying, I've had enough now, you know, I need out. I'm at a certain age and I'm maybe fed up with the government changing rules all the time. So if you keep your eyes peeled and you get onto Rightmove and you start talking to agents, I can guarantee there are properties coming onto the market now that are pretty much, you know, perfect for investment because they tend to be already let. So I'm seeing that in terms of prices. I think it's a better opportunity to negotiate now than it's been for a couple of years. So yeah, I think it's an investor's marketplace now, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more from some of the experts who know better than me.
Very good. Let's move on to the next question. Thank you all for those answers. And by the way, it is our 30th birthday, so without me going on about it, but if you can press that like button on this show, just because it's 30th, more than the show's rubbish or good, to be honest. But obviously the show is brilliant, isn't it? So give it a like just for that reasons.
Simon, can I just come in on that one in terms of the last question? Because that was, I think, two things. One was about off-plan and one was obviously about the current market. With off-plan, I think one thing you need to be aware of is that there isn't always a definite end date. A good example is a friend of mine in London. He bought a fancy flat way before COVID, off-plan, hasn't been built yet. So he had a big chunk of his money, I'm not sure, 20-30% or so tied up, and it's an expensive flat. So far, it hasn't been completed. Now, hopefully it will go through. There's no reason to think it won't, but there is a risk. But certainly sometimes these things can be held up for a long period. So I think if it hasn't been completed, there are risks. Plus, of course, there's always a risk with buying new property. Generally, as soon as they come off the market, a bit like new cars, as soon as you drive them off the forecourt, they're worth less. But I think the critical thing here is that there is no one size fits all, and there are obviously opportunities. So if you can find something that clearly is an opportunity, as Bronwen says, somebody's is selling stuff and then perhaps they need to sell it cheap. There are always, however bad the market is, there are always opportunities. And lastly, if you are buying off plan, it depends what stage of the market you're in. So if the market's rising and you're buying off plan, you're probably buying it cheaper than it will be in 6, 9, 12, 2 years' time. Certainly, if we could have all bought off plan 10 years ago, I think we'd be quite happy with prices. On the other hand, at the market, if prices are going down, you may find the price you're paying now is actually more than it's actually worth in, say, 6, 9, 12 months' time. Just a thought.
Interesting you should say that, Tim. I've just had 2 clients who said that, whereby they bought off plan, and now it's worth less than what what they could get it if they waited until it was built, which is a real shame. Simon Hodgson, question for you. Obviously, you're in the game of mortgages. What are the banks saying about the market conditions? Because they will obviously see a risk profile to the market. Are there products out there? Are they willing still to lend out?
Yeah, the mortgage market's been really interesting. Obviously, we had the turmoil pre-Christmas with the Liz Trust days. And things have steadily been getting better. In fact, just today, we saw lenders reduce, or there were a few lenders that reduced rates on some products. So we've now got some viable HMO products at 5% for a 5-year fixed. Now, whilst 5% is still expensive compared to where we were this time last year, it's cheap compared to where we were pre-Christmas. You know, that same lender was at 6.5% in November. So that's a big change. So what we're finding is still really liquid. Lenders have got money out there. They're now finding that they're not as oversubscribed in terms of applications, so they're now starting to get a bit hungry to get new clients in to keep the workforce busy, which is why they're reducing rates. And also, generally how banks borrow, which is using the SONIA swap rates, interbank lending, they've been steadily falling, even though we've had 2 interest rate rises in December and just very recently. That's still coming down. So the cost for borrowing for banks from other banks to then lend out has been getting and is steadily getting cheaper. So yeah, it's great. Absolutely. I think it's a real great opportunity for us as investors, where the mainstream media is still pushing that rhetoric of, it's still doom and gloom in the property market. However, us as informed investors, finance is out there now at better levels to be able to make a deal work and bag a deal. Absolutely.
No, interesting. I always do find that there's a lag, though, isn't there, in terms of market perception, negative of press and media. People will react, but it's normally a bit later on when they should have reacted. So I think the deals are still to be had, maybe for 6 to 12 months. And I think we said that before the show. So it'll be an interesting one. Gary is asked a question. I've seen some posts from the NRLA, Teresa. You should see what they say. About the EPC future goals and how unrealistic they are. Does the panel think that present government might reconsider? So let's go over to you first, Teresa, and then over to you, Ross, with your thoughts.
Good evening, everybody. I will initially apologise for my shoddy appearance, being late and what have you. But I can only put it down to the fact that I've just got a German Shepherd puppy, and it's just knocked my life upside down. I mean, he's more emotional than you, Simon, when being asked a tax question.
Oh, Hodgson, bless him. Bless him.
No, Misiewicz.
To be fair, I thought you've just come back from an audition from Bram Stoker's.
Really? Is that McQuiff?
Yeah.
The lighting.
And lighting.
Oh dear. Well, I'm sorry. Anyway, just to answer the question, yes, it's basically the whole EPC debacle continues. The government seem to be very undecided as to whether they're going to have a minimum EPC rating of, I think it was C at the last one, from 2025, or whether they should be focusing on the carbon footprint of the property, which is, it's two different things. So the EPC is measuring, like, how much does it cost to heat the property, and the other one, the measurement is obviously it's carbon footprint and how much energy it's using. So basically we haven't got an answer. It seems to have got sucked into some sort of void, and we're all desperately waiting, because I think landlords are concerned that they're just going to be suddenly just landed with this requirement to be up to a certain standard, and just be caught on the back hoof there. So yes, sorry, we don't know. And it is currently it is unrealistic that they want to push all properties up to a C without any funding currently for landlords, which means that if landlords have to sell properties, then they're just basically kicking a property with a lower EPC rating onto the open market, still having to be dealt with. So it's all not very good. So I don't know what everybody else thinks, but
hold on a second, because that's a really interesting question. How, in the panel, does anyone know how many properties as a percentage is A, B, or C in the EPC rankings? Oh, it'd be interesting to know that percentage. I bet it'd be very small.
I think we should ask the audience, don't you?
Yes, put out a vote.
I think by the time we finish,
50-50, phone a friend.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, I mean, what I do know is that people ask me quite regularly, should I just not bother investing because I'm never going to make a C if I'm buying an Edwardian terraced house in Portsmouth? And you say, well, hang on a minute, it's not the only reason not to. It's not a big enough reason in my book not to invest. And hopefully you hope that common sense will prevail and that we're not going to throw everybody out on the street. And there will be a period of time when we perhaps are given a little bit more time when technology improves so that we can improve things. But with a single let, for heaven's sake, we're not even or even an HMO. We're paying the utilities for an HMO, aren't we?
Just out of interest, I've just done I've gone across 5 different websites.
You're too quick.
They're all quite ranging. That 60% of properties do not meet the ATC rating.
Yeah, it's not surprising. There's a vast majority that are a D rating. And it's just so poorly thought out that you can only hope that they're going to pull something sensible together. because, you know, at the moment they're saying as well, when they raise that EPC rate and the minimum spend for landlords to bring it up to a C, they're saying is going to be a minimum of £10,000. So that doesn't matter whether you're up north or whether you're in London. It's just a blanket £10,000, which that in itself
Teresa,
doesn't make
you
sense.
said something quite logical, but illogical at the same time, because you said logically they should change it, so it wouldn't be HC, but then you talk about illogically, because this government is the one that destroyed the stock market, destroyed the pensions market, changed the corporation tax 3 times over, and stamp duty land tax. So I'm not sure that...
that's why you need a panel like us, because everyone's confused.
Take over the country. That's right.
Can I throw a couple of golden nuggets in there?
Please do.
Always.
Those nuggets.
So one of the biggest problems with EPC ratings in this country is a lot of buy-to-lets, a lot of rental properties are small 1 and 2 bed flats in blocks, which I don't know the percentages, and naturally they're electrically heated, and all the electric in this country is developed by fossil fuels until Hinkley Point comes online and others. And down in the south coast here, they're trying to bring a cable over from France, which is causing controversy as well. So until we actually get developing or generating our electricity cheaper, then air source heat pumps will never come in, because air source heat pumps use a huge electrical load to back up the temperature they take out of the air. So we're in a real quandary that if you put an air source heat pump on a property at the moment, your EPC rating goes right down because it's electrically based. So to go from gas to electric is not the right way to go at the moment. Air source heat pumps aren't the right way to go at the moment. The funding that they put out, I think I worked out on one of these shows, it was about 90,000 homes out of 6.5 million would actually qualify for the £5,000 grant the government put out there. And it's an average between 15 and 20,000 to fit an air source heat pump. But interestingly, all new houses have their pipeworks have been uprated to allow for air source heat pumps to be connected in the future. So EPC ratings, honestly, you know, you'll be looking at mass insulation, insulating the outside or the inside of your properties. It could be a whole minefield. And no government can afford to kill the rental market, because, you know, we rely on it as a nation now. So I wouldn't be too panicky about that in the next, I'm not allowed to say, well, probably 10 years. We've got to get rid of gas by 2035. We shouldn't be heating our homes with gas by 2035. So another 14 years and 12 years, and none of us can have gas boilers in our homes, or a bit like cars, you can't have a new gas boiler fitted. So what's the alternative? And it's not out there at the moment, unless anybody wants to show me it. And believe me, it's the biggest question I get is about energy usage and how to heat the home efficiently these days and bring your EPC rate up.
Yeah. So Simon, you attend so many banking meetings where they've got secret handshakes. There must be some stories being talked about with EPC ratings. What's the story with the banks?
Well, yeah, I think, you know, the banks are trying to encourage landlords, you know, to create or improve their EPC rating to a C or better and offer a product price reduction. Whether that's actually in sort of view of the fact that they think it might change in the future or not, I'm not entirely sure. I think really it comes down to what they got, isn't it? The ESG narrative that's being pushed by corporate America perhaps doesn't have its whole heart laying in the best interest of the end user. It's really in the corporate narrative that they're pushing forward.
Interesting. I'm going to take a question, just going to diversify the question set a little here. So Obidum has asked, hello expert panel, how do you deal and handle a property management company who's not up to the game? I am a leaseholder for a two bed in a block of 5 flats that is poorly maintained and managed. Tim's gone off, so it's a pity, because Tim will be quite good to have that. But Bronwen, how do you deal with letting agents? I mean, we obviously had a great letting agent, but no longer doing the show. But how do you deal with poor letting agents? Just change them, I guess. Bronwen, you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry, I've lost. Yeah, I lost you a little bit there. And also, we seem to have a problem with the link in that the link that people have been sent goes to a recording from last year. So can I ask you to send me the link onto the WhatsApp group to the YouTube, and then I will send it out to those that are emailing me.
Yeah, sure.
And I can send it out into my Facebook. So apologies, everybody. But if you're watching live, fantastic, because it means you've reached us. But for some of those that came through my link, it doesn't seem to be getting there. Welcome back, Teresa. And we've now lost Tim. Oh no, we've lost Tim. Tim, we've lost.
I know, but Tim will come
Strange.
back. Sure.
What's going on today? Thank you. So go back to the question. I will answer it. So tell me, what was the question about agents? Was it?
Yeah, so it's poorly agents. So if you've got agents that aren't performing very well, my answer is just to quickly change them over. But he does talk about he's a leaseholder for a 2-bedroom flat. So I'm rather wondering if he's talking about a freehold management. And that is going to be a Tim answer, which he would say you will probably need to speak to your solicitor.
Yes. Okay. So agents in terms of managing a property rental, you've got to shop around. There are high street agents, lots of them. So check out what their terms are, but also see if you can get a recommendation from another landlord in the area. By far, that's going to be better, because you can talk to somebody who's already experiencing their service levels. Personally, I have from high street agents onto private agents, so people who are investors themselves, who perhaps manage their own properties or have built up a management company themselves. They tend to be much better, because they're not busy trying to deal with all sorts of things in the office, maybe sales on one hand, lettings on another, short-staffed, whatever it might be. So I tend to find that networking with people, you can find out who's good in an area and who isn't so good. That's on the letting side. In terms of freehold, lease, being a lease property, then the freeholder, it's a bit out of your hands really, but I'm sure you can get solicitors involved, and Tim is your man. Any other
Tim's
comments?
Not here, but he'll be back. We'll pose that question.
He'll be back.
But I want to get Ross excited, because I always like the look of his face when he gets excited. There's always a glimmer of hope in this show when Ross gets excited. So Obedem again has asked a question. There is an ongoing water leak, and there's water in the walls causing damp, mold, and either from the roof or gutters. I'm concerned about health and safety of the tenants and their children. What do we do about it? So I guess this is Obedem is talking about from a this is a person talking about the freehold, which the 2-bed is part of a 5-flat block. So I just wonder if this is connected, but maybe there's some things that he can do, Ross, even if it's a freehold management company. Is there something that he can do if there is water coming through gutters or whatever to inspect it?
Gutters would be the first port of call. Get the gutters cleaned, and I don't mean get up on the ladder and south. Nobody does that anymore. You use a Hoover system, a vacuum extract for gutters, and there's lots of companies around. I don't know whereabouts in the country he is. Anything that's around a roof is probably, in the last few weeks, we had some heavy winds before Christmas, and I was inundated with calls about roofs. Tiles have moved, flashings have been disturbed. From a legal point of view, really need Tim back. Again, if it's the freeholder that's not performing and not getting somebody around there to sort it out, I don't really know what you can do. And I'd certainly speak to the other landlords, tenants, and see if they would be willing to get the gutters vacuum extracted and just cleaned out, to see if that helps the problem. Or if you can safely get access up into the loft, get up into the loft and just see if there's any evident holes in the roof, etc. And I won't touch on the damp and mold, because that's a whole subject in its own right, and I will get very excited if we get a damp and mold question tonight.
There's a question on here, and I was trying to work it out. I've been typing an answer, which I've just realised I put a typo in it now. But hi, Ian. You just typed a question here saying, what professional fees would you pay out before making a bid on a flat or a house? Could you just elaborate on that point, because it'd be really good to answer that, but I don't want to answer it in the wrong way. Well, actually, they just said, I'm referring to auction properties, by the way, thanks. So what professional fees would you pay out before a bid? Oh, zero. I mean, I wouldn't pay any fees at all. So, Simon, what's your views on that?
Yeah, you might want to get the solicitor to have a look over the legal pack.
Professional. Oh, okay, yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, if it's possible, sometimes it might be possible to get a solicitor on board where you agree a set fee for a number of properties, or that they'll help go through the legal pack, knowing that they're going to get the instruction possibly. Yeah, because that's usually one of the first things I'll say to somebody is, have you checked the legal pack? You sure everything is in okay that's in that pack, so that we know that lending can be sought relatively straightforwardly. Or are there any weird covenants that mean that we're going to have a lot of to and fro in between solicitors, which is in 28 days not fun?
Just a word of caution on auction properties, and again, I see lots of people go to auction, and some people have bought some real bargains and they've made some reasonable money out of them. Others have gone in completely naively, without any building construction knowledge. They buy something, they think it's a good property, and then the nightmare starts. So find yourself a good builder and look after them. That's always my first thing.
Ross, would you like a real life story of that?
Sorry?
Would you like a real life story of that?
Yeah, go on.
Me. So I bought a house, it's an end terrace house, for £45,000 on Louise's credit card. Yeah, so she was amused by that. So spent it, put it on the credit card, because I thought it was a good deal. I hadn't seen the property before, so I came in, but I said, well, I know the area, I should be able to flog it, get some good rentals on it. The supporting wall, which is about 30 foot high, was unsafe and needed the whole ground ripping up. It was next to a chip shop, so there's all issues of that chip shop going into the house and causing damp issues with that. But you know what I did? I put it in the auction for a month and got 54,000 for it.
You were lucky. You're extremely lucky.
Yeah. So
auctions are a great place to find properties, but not for the faint-hearted. And just touching on fees, if you're not sure, a structure to go quick look isn't going to be thousands of pounds and may just save you making a mistake. Or find yourself a really good builder and get them to go along and have a look. Just be really careful. We go through this every month, don't we? What would be your favourite property to buy? I'd love to buy auction properties every day because they come with risk, but I can put them right.
You win, so you lose. But if you lose, you can lose big, and that's the point, isn't it?
Yes.
No, good point. Let's go to Schwal, and then I'll take some other questions. I've noticed many more properties are for sale through agents for modern auction. Okay, so that could be Dutch auction, I guess, and things like that. What advice can you give about this method of sale? I mean, who's done things like reverse auctions or Dutch auctions? Anyone had experience of those? Because I've seen them and I've stayed away from them because I just think I can't be bothered, if I'm totally honest. But any panel member have got involved in those?
I think like you, Simon, I've looked and walked away. There's a fee you have to pay the agent, a set fee, and it doesn't sit comfortably with me.
No. Let's move on.
No, I have an auction expert, a guy called Piotr Rozenik, who has written a book and is really, really good at teaching people about normal auctions. And auction terms have changed hugely as well since COVID. So you do need to work with experts. And I'm not sure we've got any experts in this little group here, but
unfortunately not.
I can see if I can find someone for you if you want.
Okay, let's go to a different question. This is someone who's registered for before. This is Steve, and Steve's asked a very good question. It's something I often wonder why we don't have more investors in this. Steve's asked, do any of the panel invest in commercial or light industrial as alternatives to resi? If so, what sort of returns might be possible? And it is the reason why I find it an interesting question. This is because I like the idea of commercial property. I don't do it myself, by the way, but I do like the idea of commercial property because you have a long lease with a supplier, and if you get someone like Boots or Costa Coffee, you're laughing. because it's there. You don't have to worry about the maintenance. You don't have to worry about EPC rating as much. You don't have to worry about all the legislation kicking evicting tenants and stuff like that. But it's, anyone in the panel members, I guess we're all resi property investors, but is there anyone here that deals with commercial? Everyone's saying no, not many. So, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, yeah, holiday lets and genuine sort of motels and hotels. Bronwen's a queen of that kind of thing in Southampton.
Not commercial in the sense of light industrial or...
Yeah, I've got quite a few clients who do such a thing. So they'll either buy a semi-commercial, so you've got a shop with uppers, so you've got a mix of both, or it could be a shop or units on an industrial estate. And yeah, you're right. You know, yield-wise, generally it can be north of 10%. There's a thing known as strength as covenant, which you kind of touched on there, Simon. If you get a property and you can get a Boots or a Costa or a Starbucks to sign a 15-year repairing lease with no break clauses, you can sometimes double and treble the value of a security without having done much work to it. So it's a fabulous strategy. It's an awful lot more difficult to get right, and lenders are more sort of hesitant to lend out until you've got buy-to-let experience. But absolutely, it's a great strategy. That more people could and should do, and also you can hold it in your pension.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you've got to get quite knowledgeable because there are risks. I've certainly did more learning around how commercial works and what the risks are. I've looked at shops, where the shops in terms of space, floor space, because they need a certain amount. It's very specific, and you need to know what that is before you even offer on a property. And yeah, guest houses. I mean, tired bed and breakfast. There's plenty of those around at the moment, and I would think there'll be more and more coming through this year. So it's a great strategy because you know it's already used for accommodation, and you can look at serviced accommodation, different ways of serviced accommodation. You can even convert to flats. So yeah, always happy to talk to people about what I've done there and how I've been able to find properties, or even look at purchase lease options, which is a great strategy in the current market if people are selling lots of different properties at different times. So yeah, commercial, definitely worth toying with and looking at and understanding, in my opinion. Yeah.
So I'm going to go to a different question to Bram Stoker over there. So there's a question from Sue, who's asked the question: how can I reduce my risk of tenants not paying rent? Scotland extended non-eviction period. Is rent insurance cover worthwhile? And I know that NRLA used to do insurance, then they took it off. Is it back on, Teresa? I'm going to take that silence as no.
Oh dear. It's just one of them evenings, isn't it? Yes, I mean, basically I would I think that just to ensure that you do all your checks before you do take some tenants on, that is crucial. But yes, I mean, when I was taking tenants on, I would do all the checks, but then I would use the NRLA service to do that, and then at the same time they could check to see if they were willing to insure them for rent protection.
I mean, from an eviction perspective, Teresa, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Because I know for a while that it seems to be, we've got two bishops here. There you go. That's a proper chessboard, isn't it? When you've got two bishops on the chessboard.
No, I think the light's slowly going out on that one, Simon, right. Because at the moment we do have the use of the Section 21, but the courts, the whole process is not functional. So there's always huge backlogs, and so it takes you a long time to get possession back of your property. So it's just making, landlords very, very wary about, taking tenants on without doing a full, check on them. So there's gone are the days where, a tenant just says, oh, I need to get somewhere quickly. And, can I move in, tomorrow? Because it's like, no, because we're going to have to do a full check on you because it's just not worth the risk. So yes, and unfortunately, we're heading down the road where they want to remove the Section 21. And then God knows whether it's going to be better or worse. It's hard to say at the moment, but I haven't got much confidence.
Interesting.
So yeah, rent insurance is the way. I mean, I I've always done that, just set up the insurance to start with, and then when I become confident with the tenant, are they regularly paying the rent, then perhaps I won't renew the insurance, but I certainly do it for the first, for the first fixed term.
Mm. Well, thank you for that, Teresa. I'm going to go back to Tim now that he's back. I'm going to exit the other Tim. That seems to be one here. So I'll take that Tim off, and hopefully we can just get.
Will you remove the right Tim?
There we are. I've got the right Tim in place. So we've now got just one bishop rather than two bishops. So the question that we paused for thought was, what do you do when you are in a one-bedroom flat as a leaseholder, which you've rented out, and the freehold management, it hasn't been managed very well, and it sounds like it's in a run-down condition? What can you do against the freeholder?
Okay, there are a number of options there. Number one, you can get together, take some action with your fellow leaseholders, and there are a number of ways of doing that. You can take over the right to manage, and again, you have to have enough people on board to do that. It means you take over the entire responsibility for management. You can either do it yourself or you can pass it to a management company of your choice. So that's number one. Secondly, you can go through a process called freehold purchase or enfranchisement, by which you and a minimum of half the other leaseholders buy the freehold. Now that does have more costs because you have to pay the freeholder for that, but as a result you can grant yourself a 999 lease and you are the freeholders. So you and your fellow leaseholders therefore have complete control. There are other routes as well. There's one called the court appointed property manager. Now it's quite an obscure one and most people don't use it, but what you can do there, you don't need to have anybody else with you. So you don't have to worry about having half the leaseholders on board with you. You can do it on your own. But the problem with this one is, unlike the others, this is blame related. So right to manage, you can have the most perfect freeholder who's done nothing wrong. You can still take over the right to manage. Same with enfranchisement, but for the court-appointed property manager, you do need to prove that the freeholder has been at fault in terms of poor management of the property. They're probably the three most effective ways of doing that. Of course, there are other ways of challenging the service charge, for example, if you're being overcharged, but that can get quite messy. So there are your three options, really, of which the best two are probably the right to manage and enfranchisement, because it gives you complete control, and you don't have to worry, therefore, about having a dodgy freeholder who manages the block badly.
Perfect answer, and that was well worth the wait. I have to
Thank
say.
you.
So thank you very much for that. So let's go to a different question, and this is from Sue. Actually, no, I've already done that one. Let's go to Gary's question, which was, what are the panel currently focusing on to grow their portfolios? What strategies suit the current market and economic situation? Let's go over to the panel members for that. So Bronwen, and let's go over to you, Tim, again. So Bronwen first.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Because I was trying to sort out the difficulties we've had with this link.
No worries. So the question from Gary was, what are the panel currently focusing on to grow their portfolios? So you can talk about your overseas property.
Okay, cool.
What strategies suit the current market and economic situation?
Yes, okay. So for me personally, I've been living in Africa for a couple of years and been looking at places to invest abroad, a bit of diversification, but also in beautiful places. So I'm doing a development in Zanzibar, which is in Tanzania, an island off Tanzania, doing 9 apartments. We bought the plot. We're actually using a builder and an agent locally, and we're taking part payments for off-plan sales. So a bit like we talked about earlier. So that's what I'm doing. I'm also refurbishing a big guest house in Southampton that Ross, thank you very much, is doing an amazing job on. So that's a 3 or 4 month refurb costing over 200,000. So it's quite a big investment, but that was a purchase lease option, interestingly, 5 years ago that we ended up buying. Thank you to Simon Hodgson here as well. So you can see that, as an investor, you do progress to different things, but also some things do take quite a long time to actually work through as well. So that's where I am at the moment. Anyone else?
I might just Tim, actually you go first and then I'll go second.
Okay, to me, in a certain sense, the rules never change. It's just the detail that changes. So to me, the good thing with investment is all about adding value. So sometimes that can be done by going below market value. That's what everybody's looking for. It can be too competitive, but equally there are going to be increasingly, I think, in this recession, people who have to sell for whatever reason. They've forced sell for whatever reason, and therefore there will be some below market value properties that are hard to find. Alternatively, the two things that I've done in the last year, I would carry on doing now, even if the recession hadn't hit. So the serviced accommodation, buying a B&B, which had been frankly run as a lifestyle business, we can improve it, improve the income, get more rooms there. To me, that would work just as well now as when I bought it back in the summer. And I'm still trying to get this, the legendary office into the SAS pension. Again, to me, that's still going to work. The value of the office hasn't frankly changed, and I don't expect it to particularly go up or down. The value for me there is tax. So the money I put in, I claim 40% roughly back as a tax rebate, and then all the income goes into the tax, goes into the SAS tax-free. So I think it works just as well without. And to me, the only difference is that the figures can be tighter in a recession, but equally it can give opportunities. So I suppose, you know, what it gives in one hand takes away the other. So yeah, it's harder to get money. It's more expensive to get money. Less of bargains available, but there sometimes will be cheaper bargains if you look hard enough. And some strategies just are classic, provided the figures add up. And it may be, you know, you have to take more care on making sure those figures add up in a recession.
I think one of the things that I had a thought process for myself this year was talking about, and another client asked me what my strategy was going forwards. And like you, Tim, we've got professional services. So, you know, rent will never be exceeding our businesses. And for me personally, we just never will do. So I don't need the income as such, but what I'm looking at is something that Nomad Capitalist said on their YouTube channel quite often in the last 3-4 videos, talking about net worth. And one of the things I looked at was, well, actually, that's a good point about building up capital value, not necessarily income, because I don't need it, but I know, but that goes again, what is your strategy? What do you need? Income, or are you looking for capital? Because they are very distinctly different. And the strategy you deploy to get one or the other is significantly different. Where you buy, what type of property you go for, what type of tenants you look for, etc. So for us, Louise and I, we obviously bought the properties in Spain. We want to do the property up. We're putting money, like it's money pits, to kind of keep on developing it beyond belief, but it's significantly going to be worth more. We're going to do the same in the US. So we'll buy a property. The rents that we'll get will be minimal. To be honest, it might just only cover the expenses of running that property, but we know that the adding value, and over time we're buying in the right location. So we're in the Golden Mile right now in Spain. In America, we'll be focusing on a specific area in Naples, Florida, which we know will balloon out of control continuously over the next 10-15 years. So it's really about understanding your own strategy. What do you need? Is it income or is it capital? I know, Bronwen, you've got on one of your channel own programs, you've got a video on this, haven't you? It talks about which strategy. Maybe you could plug that.
Well, I've got lots of different ways of looking at investing, and I think, yes, in terms of my modules, I talk about the different strategies, the pros and cons of the different strategies, and it is very personal. You know, we're all in a very different situation when we start, but we also have slightly different tax positions as well. So, and then we talk about SAS pensions, small self-administered scheme pensions. Again, those are only for certain type of people in certain situations. So it's really hard to stay on this program with lots of people, you know, probably half of whom are starting and half are probably more experienced than me. You know, we've all got different issues and different things to consider at different times. So I always say, yes, I mean, certainly by all means, come and look at my program of knowledge, of information, and lots of content there, 24 hours of recorded information, but also book sessions with us on this panel if you wanted to ask specific questions. Because, you know, we could take hours and hours, couldn't we, around looking at specific individuals. I think we did have one specific question with somebody, didn't we, where they have a portfolio and they want to sell it over a period of time. Quite detailed question, which, you know, probably would be much better done on a one-to-one basis, maybe.
Yeah, and there was quite a few of those questions which we've had to filter out, because It's not
Yeah.
generic. It's not it's only it's
Yeah.
very specific, and it can't be dealt with for all the listeners. It wouldn't be fair to talk about that in 10-15 minutes. So yes, you're right. There are links to that. I've just popped in a link for the course, which Bronwen will talk about strategy. So do get onto that. There's a free webinar, which I just provided a link. But equally, there is a whole contact list of all of us below this video description. So do get that. And whilst you're looking at the video description, why not just click that like button? I mean, it's not going to hurt, is it? So do that. I mean, what else are you doing? So just click that like button and passively listen to the show and just be entertained by us all. I'm going to go to another question, which is Greg's asked. We've managed to manage our buy-to-let and one HMO properties ourselves and have a lot of admin and responsibilities. How do the panel reduce this workload? Are there systems and technologies to help? And before I go to the other panel members, that my background was Lean Six Sigma, process business reengineering, and I used to look at all blue chip companies. And the big thing I always see is that people would always delegate their rubbish. And I always used to say to people, look at what you do and delete the unnecessary things that you do. Okay, just go through a raft and you'll be surprised that you will actually delete more than 60% of all tasks that you do if you're honest with yourself and say, does this task help me grow my wealth? Just write down your task for a week, just for 1 week, and then go through that list and say, does that actually genuinely help me increase my wealth or achieve my goals? Once you've done that, so that's delete. Once you've done that, is then the ones that you think are worthy doing, can they be automated? And looking at systems, tools, products that are out there to help you systemize that activity. And then finally, if you have gone through that list and you've kept the essential tasks, you've automated some of those rest, the next bit is delegate. I see people do it the other way around though. So they get virtual PAs, they get administration and businesses. And I'm talking about blue chip companies where I've gone in. And why do you think that people like me used to go in and take out maybe 10-15% of management? That was my role. I used to go to blue chip companies and wipe out 15% of management, because mostly they're all a waste of time, because they were doing things that had no meaning to the overall goal of the business. Now, you could do that for a small business. You could do that for property. So I'll hand it over to someone else now, because, you know, a bit like Ross Maynard, that's a very passionate subject of mine. And I can already tell that, you know, the blood is already going and I don't want to gush over. So I'll go over to the other panel members. What have you done to streamline your administration processes? Let's go to Tim, because you've got a business as well. Then we'll go over to Simon, Hodgson and Bronwen, and Teresa, in fact.
I think first, your advice is absolutely right. You know, there's far too much unnecessary management. So actually find what you need to do and do the minimum. And that's something we've been doing for a long time. My wife's a management accountant, again, Lean Six Sigma thing. So I think we've done that to an extent. One very personal thing, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm always amazed more people don't use it, though I think they're starting to come in, is voice activated software. In particular, I've been using Dragon now for typing for 10 years. Most of us still have to type, etc. If you're on your phone, Siri's pretty good, but Dragon's been fantastic. And I just don't understand why more people haven't had it. You know, I try to get a lot of my lawyers to use it. Some of them do, some of them don't, but it's incredibly quick. I did a test, for example, with one of my youngsters. Now, these are the guys who've grown up typing, and he thought he was really quick, and he was. He did about 85 words a minute typing, and we did an identical test. That's pretty good. I think it was 96% accurate, which is really pretty impressive. Top of the range stuff. Even secretaries don't beat that. I think I had 153 words a minute at 99% accuracy. So fantastic. So again, if you have to type a lot and you're using a PC or whatever and you're not using Siri, I recommend Dragon. Dragon voice activated software. There you go.
I'll vouch for that, because that was something I put into the NHS.
Ah.
There you go. Okay, anyone else that does that kind of stuff, feel to raise your hand. Simon, Bronwen.
On the advice of the wise owl Simon M, a Calendly booking system to booking calls, so you can manage when in your day you allocate to speak to people, which is effectively you're trying to see if there's a business opportunity, whether you can help that person can help you, etc. And then another part of the day where you're actually creating revenue for the business, because obviously phone calls don't always generate revenue, for sure. And the other real nugget, I think that you might have told me as well, Simon, to be fair, was if you're looking to delegate stuff out, spend a couple of days writing down every task you do all day long, and then do it for at least a few days. You can then get a consistency of what you actually do, and then look at how much of that time am I now spending doing me stuff that I shouldn't be doing? How much of my day was stuff that really didn't produce anything? Absolutely. And how much could we then put into a job brief to then take on staff to actually take away some of the load? Lots of golden nuggets from Simon M.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, they're all fantastic things, business things as well. But if I put myself in the shoes of a tired landlord that perhaps hasn't had the technical skills in the past and has got by, I think tenants do get people down a bit. I've never had to deal with tenants at all. Now that's not, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it isn't, so I think if you've got a certain strategy and it's important for you to find tenants and you really enjoy it, then fantastic. But the ones that sort of nag at me and say, oh, I can't be doing this anymore, I'm going, well, get someone else to do some of that stuff. So I am very much in the mind of delegation, but a couple of other tools that we use is a tool called Asana. So that's a team tool. So if you have got tasks that need to be done, whether it's for yourself or somebody else, or maybe it's something that's going to take some time, like the certificates of, fire safety and all those things that are really important as for landlords, then we have a system where, we put it in, yes, each year or every 2 years, whatever the date is, you put in, it's coming up, you've got who's done it, you've got the certificate sat there in the system, so you don't lose things, and also your email trail doesn't disappear as well. So Asana is one of the really good things that I can bring to this discussion. Anyone else got anything else?
I like Asana as well. Teresa?
Yeah, I mean, just looking back, just looking at what a landlord is administering, essentially, you're administering tenants paying the rent, maintenance, meeting your legal obligations. I mean, the NRLA are launching a property management software, basically called NRLA Portfolio. So that's being launched in March. I mean, there's some members using it already, and that's basically where you can, and it's a free service to members. So you can log all your safety certificates, and as Bronwen says, it then flags up, when you need to renew those. You can keep a track of the rent, because you really need to keep a track of that, because if a tenant doesn't pay, you need to be straight on it, resolving it as to why that is. And also, if you get repeated late payers, you need evidence to take to court. If you are seeking possession on rent arrears. I mean, I would steer I would steer people to the NRLA Portfolio package, because it captures everything a landlord needs to do in the day, with a job, and streamlining it. Or as Bronwen said, outsource it, give it to an agent to do, because there are some agents who you can sign a contract to do specific things. It could just be maintenance only, like maintenance checks. So you could maybe just farm that part out, and continue to manage the other parts. Or the difficult part, managing tenants, maybe you can get a good agent to do that. But there is software out there to support this.
And finally, just on that part of stuff, is always hire people better than you. So if people are good at administration or bookkeeping and you're struggling, spending 5-6 hours on something, someone good might do it in 2 hours. So you may not be paying them for 6 hours. You might actually pay them for much less time than you're struggling yourself on. So just a hint on that.
Can I come back on that, Simon? And I was going to mention that, actually. I would say, since effectively yours and mine industries are service industries, well, actually most of property is as well, whether it's service accommodation or with tenants, and therefore I think getting people is really important. It's a hard market the last few years to get the right people. So I would say, if you are looking to get people or appoint people or employ people, actually make that a priority. Probably my biggest task is getting the right people on board. I spend a lot of time with it. I move very quickly on it. I don't mess around. But I think getting the right people, there's a fantastic fantastic book by a guy called Jim Collins called Good to Great. And basically, the critical thing I learned from it was actually you get the right people, then you put them in the right seat on the bus. Sometimes you can have people in the wrong seat. So actually getting the right people, you know when they're the right people. They're positive, they're innovative, they're coming up with solutions, they're not negative. If you have to move them around, do. But getting the right people is more important than automatically having someone perhaps who's done it for 100 years.
Yeah, Richard Branson said that, funny enough. Hire the people even if you don't need them right now, because you will do eventually. Really important one there. Let's move on to a quick question, because I think we've probably done that one to death. Talk about efficiency. I think we've been overly effective. So Nigel's asked a question: planning permission. Can I convert my garage and put in an annex in the garden for my kids to use? Looking at ways to add value to my property. Again, Ross and Simon ready to answer that question. Is it a good idea? I mean, Ross is looking quite inquisitive about this, isn't he?
Yeah, well, you're talking to somebody who's just converted his garage, so
Yeah.
and has a place in the garden as well. Yeah, I mean, without looking at the house, it's very difficult to say. Yeah, my garage was internal to my house, so it was quite an easy conversion and very straightforward on the planning. I've got a summer house in the garden, like a lot of people these days. Is that's what he's talking about? Some sort of outhouse, but it can't have running water, it can't have drainage, or it becomes a dwelling. And then you have to go for full planning, which you're highly unlikely to get. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's one of those questions where unless you show me a picture of the house, it's very difficult to give you an honest answer. Generally, to convert a garage, if it's located close to the house, isn't a problem. To build something in your garden, depending on what you're building, the permitted development rules apply, and they vary around the countryside. So yeah, that's about as generic as I can be with it. I think I can say more.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not uncommon really for people, to buy a house that when they convert into an HMO that's got an attached garage and reclaim that space. Obviously, the number one thing is make sure that you've got the correct planning and building regs in place, because otherwise getting funding will be impossible. Seen that a number of times where people come, oh yeah, it'll be all right. Yeah, we've got loose an agreement. What do you mean an agreement? You either have the correct permissions or you don't have the correct permissions, and the lender will only see it in that black and white light, and they'll be guided by their solicitors that act for them, as I'm sure you'll say, Tim. There's no way of fudging it. Sometimes you can get some indemnity policies, but you certainly don't get any indemnities for planning. Lack of thereof.
Good. I'm going to move over to another question, if that's okay, guys, just so we can keep up the flow. Let me just have a look at this question here. It's, hi, I'm starting a LTD, limited company portfolio of rented properties. These are brand new off plan. Talk about off plan early. I'm curious as to whether you manage your property portfolio directly or use an agency. I think we've covered that in terms of time efficiency. I don't think it's really worth your time thinking about how much money you save. If you've got a good agency, get a good agency or hire someone to do it for you. But I wouldn't do that. But they continue to say, I'm thinking just to do a rent collection service and build up a network of trade professionals I can contact and manage directly should there be any issues. The flats I own are different cities. And again, it's back to, if you're trying to compare yourself to a letting agent, I think you'll fail, because they'll know more people than you, and they'll have good tradespeople. Ross, though, from your perspective, I mean, obviously, I know you're in the refurbishment game, but equally, if someone's trying to build up a portfolio of builders, plumbers, electricians, what's the best way to do that rather than using a letting agent?
I mean, word of mouth is always the best way. Finding other networking and finding other landlords, people that can help you, people that will happily put you onto somebody. One thing I would say, and I operate on the south coast down here. Everybody is so busy. It's been the busiest January I've ever known, with small problems, the leaking roof to the broken tap, but also through to refurbishment. Everything is still very, very busy. So yeah, I mean, you can try and build up your own. Your key ones are probably an electrician, a plumber. Worship the plumber. We always have to worship the plumbers these days. because they're the ones you call in your hour of need. And yes, they do charge some serious money sometimes, but if you've got water pouring through the house or the gas has gone off and nobody else can put the boiler right, you know, you've got an unhappy tenant, your money's going to start to flow out the door anyway. So yeah, electrician and plumber is probably the key one. The previous question, they were saying they had people in properties in different areas. I'm not sure how that would work. You'd need sort of, if they've got 6 properties in 6 areas, that's 6 electricians, 6 plumbers, because these guys won't normally go outside of their patch. So that sort of thing, I would definitely recommend you go through an agent. It can also be a nightmare dealing with individual trades, because if there's a leak, is that the roof or is it a plumber? And by the time you've called the plumber out and he's told you it's the roof, you've already got a bill from the plumber. So sometimes better just to leave that with the agents, or if you can find a maintenance company that's reliable and renowned, use them.
I'm going to I'm reading a question. I'm just thinking, I can't wait to ask this question of you again, Ross, because this is going to get you excited. And I'm just trying to remember the question, just so I can.
Is it a damp and mold one?
Yeah. So the question Jim has asked: positive input ventilation, something I'm considering for some of my single let flats. Can Ross provide golden nuggets on these to remove condensation and mold? Take it away, Ross.
Oh, okay. So yeah, great idea. If you think about a spray booth for a car, when you're spraying a car, you use positive ventilation. It means you're forcing air into the building rather than extracting it out. You're actually forcing air, normally down through the loft, and then it pushes air and pressurizes the building. I don't mean it pressurizes it so your ears are going to pop every time you move in there. It's very passive, it's very low, but it does work. The downside of that is the units in the loft. You've got normally 2 big filters on it. Those filters need changing. Otherwise you're just recirculating dirty air. You've also got to have, if you look at most buildings these days, I'm going to get into damp and mold. Buildings are so well built these days, they're so well sealed. If you go to your average 3 beds that you've just bought off plan, and you walk in there, the building is so well sealed. Where does the air leak to? So if you take a bucket and you fill it with half fill it with hot water, and then you put it in the fridge, the top of it condenses, and there's your mold buildup. It's exactly the same in the house. There's nowhere for that air to go. So with a passive system, which is what he's talking about here, a positive ventilation system, great idea. Would I put one in a rental place? In an HMO, I always recommend high level humidistat fans that go on automatically. As soon as the moisture builds up, it pulls it out. Give the tenant, the occupier, limited access to any switching off facility. You need to have it an isolation, but give them limited access to it, because I'll just turn it off. That would be the way I would go. Probably a bit more costly, and more fans. But who's going to keep going up in the loft to check those filters? Who's going to check the whole house out? It's not something you can just go, and you can buy these things off the shelf for a few £100. It's not something you can just put in the loft, start it up, and let it run and think you've solved the problem. It's not complicated, but it needs a specialist to look at it. And personally, an HMO bathroom humidistat fan, oversize it, and there's loads. Going for
very good.
My speakers have just gone off. I would go down that route.
Perfect. Right, let's move on to a Tim question, if it's okay. So Tim, I'm going to ask you a question about leases. So Naima Johnson on YouTube Live has asked a question. My property has 100 years left on the lease. When is a good time to renew the lease, please?
Okay, I would say if I were you, and this is not legal advice, but I wouldn't bother at the moment, to be honest. The issues with regard to lease extension, number one is how much you're going to pay, and secondly, actually your ability to sell and mortgage it. I'm sure Simon will confirm at 100 years, you're not going to have a slightest bit of problem with the mortgage. That probably becomes an issue when you go below 80 years. At the moment, the 80 years is the critical point. because at the moment there's what's called marriage value that kicks in. That means that the day the minute that your lease drops below 80 years, the premium goes up because the freeholder can charge an extra, some extra money. Now there is controversy at the moment, or rather uncertainty. The government keep making these lovely comments about how wonderful they're going to be to leaseholders. Boris said at one stage, we're going to be saving leaseholders tens of thousands of pounds a year. We're going to abolish ground rent. Well, they did abolish ground rent, but only on new leases. They've said equally that they are going to abolish marriage value, but they haven't gone to any details apart from saying it'll be in the last session of Parliament. Strictly between me and you, my personal instinct, and I've spoken to somebody else who agrees with me, is that if they do bring in the marriage value ban, I suspect it will only be for new leases. That's any lease that comes from scratch, like a new build, or also sometimes when you get a lease extension, you can actually write a new lease. So therefore, at the moment, if I were you, I wouldn't worry. Make sure, however, it doesn't drop below 80 years. So normally we reckon people should have a look once it stops dropping below 85 years. But for you with 100 years, you really don't need to worry at the moment at all, to be honest. Unless, of course, you want to pay me lots of money to extend your lease, in which case we'll happily do it.
There you go. I'm going to go over to you, Tim, again, if that's okay. This is from Laura. Laura says, buying a leasehold property. We're being asked whether we want to be joint tenants or tenants in common. What is the difference, please?
Okay, right. Joint tenancy is like having a joint bank account. Basically, you own the flat together. So if anything happens to one of you, if one of you passes away, the other one ends up as the only owner and gets it outright. So it's fairly straightforward. That's joint tenancy. Tenancy in common is subtly different. You both own the property, but you own it in separate parts. And the relevance of that are twofold. One, because of tax, which I'll come to in a moment. The main thing, however, is how it passes if anything happens to you. So if you were to pass on, it wouldn't automatically go to the survivor. It would go to whoever you left under your will. So give you an example, joint tenants in the past were more common to be long-term couples, especially married couples who wanted to share together. But tenancy in common perhaps was more common amongst more business arrangements or friends who move in with a friend, and you want to be able to have your own separate shares. The other thing with tenancy in common and joint tenants is the possibility of a tax advantage. And again, Simon will go into this probably in more detail, but just in a sense, if you have tenancy in common, you don't have to have a 50% share each. So for example, you could continue to own it together, but you could transfer it to 99% to partner A, 1% to partner B. And that can be quite useful if partner A partner B is a low tax or a non-taxpayer and partner A is a high taxpayer. So it can be a way sometimes of reducing the tax you pay. But to do that, you'll need a trust deed. We often work with Optimise to do that. We do the trusts, but Simon, being the clever one, does the tax and the money. Simon?
Thank you for that. I think I'm not going to add any more value to what Tim's already said, but do get some legal and tax advice whenever you're unsure about this kind of thing. Don't make any mistakes by assuming stuff or reading stuff on Facebook. Okay, so let's
Alex, I can add, actually, you can also transfer from one to another. So if you are tenants in common, you can become joint tenants or vice versa.
Okay, Perry has asked the question. There's a couple of people who have asked questions about tax and tax structures. Again, not really relevant to everyone. So what I've done for you guys is put links into articles and videos that I think is worth you watching. So if it's very specific, then we'll about that level of tax, then if it's okay with you guys, just feel free to have a look at those. Steve's asked, we have 7 rental properties in joint owned by my wife and personally 5 HMOs and 2 single-lets. We are looking for the most tax efficient strategy. That is so detailed, unfortunately, Steve. So when we're looking at kind of giving recommendations, there are so many connotations in terms of your earnings, your wife's earnings, your family earnings, how long you're going to be in this country for, how long you're going to be working for, how many kids you got, so many variables. So there's never a generic answer for that one. So please do get some tax advice. It's not going to be, I appreciate this is free and it's a great resource, but it can also lead you to a lot of other fundamental mistakes and assumptions that then cause you more issues than actually paying for the service in the first place. So please do get some good tax advice on that one. Let me just have a look. There's a message here. I'm not sure what that was. Oh, Ross, you just put in there a message. I'll pick at that in a second. Let's talk about another one. This is for you again, Ross. My tenant found mold in the upstairs bedroom, which was not there when they moved in. It was pretty bad. They have now only paid £350 rent when it was meant to be 695, can I assume it is due to them finding the mold? How would you approach this? So this is a difficult one, Tim, Ross, but I'll go to Ross first and maybe Tim secondly. In terms
Well,
of
I think
legal
Teresa.
stance. Yeah, and Teresa, yeah.
Maybe.
So let's get you all involved in that one. Ross, kick us off.
I can probably tell you why the mould was there. And the first thing I would be doing is going in and seeing the wet clothes on the radiators, which is the common one. All the fans shut off in the bathrooms and the doors left open whilst they have hot, steamy baths or showers. That's normally the cause. I mean, the reason, if it wasn't there when they moved in and it is now, it could be damp clothes left on the back of chairs, leaned against walls that create a nice little cavity. There's a million reasons for mould and damp. I could spend the next hour, or at least 10 minutes telling you about mould and damp, but I don't think that was really the question. I think it's really one for Teresa, this one.
Yeah, go for it, Teresa.
Yeah, this is a really high profile topic at the moment with the tragic death of a child, and it was in social renting sector, not the private. But all the same, it is tragic. So this is really high profile, this topic. Yeah, we're getting a lot of inquiries about it. I mean, the landlord has a responsibility to, that the property is free of hazards. And even if a tenant is causing that hazard, it, unfortunately, as unfair as it may seem, it's still the landlord's responsibility to remove the hazard. So, I mean, the landlord really needs to visit this property urgently to find out, as Ross has stated, what is causing the problem. Is the landlord going to arrive to find that, there's like piles of wet washing everywhere? But regardless, you've got an issue here of unpaid rent as well. So I think, like a swift visit to the property to amicably, talk through the problem, and for the landlord to show that they are, very willing to sort the problem out, and they will be doing as quickly as possible. Please do make sure that you put any communications that you have with the tenant in writing, because if this is probably highly unlikely, but if it does escalate and it goes to the they report it to the council or whatever, you will have communication that you have been looking to sort it out. And if it is their fault, then you need to put that in writing that you've had a discussion, it's their fault, and by taking the problem away, then they're likely to remedy it. But in the meantime, the landlord should really be removing the mould. So that is, using the antifungal solutions. There's some very good paint out there produced by Glickstone, which basically once you put that on, no mould will grow on it again. It may not sort the problem out, but at least it's getting rid of that mould, which is important, and taking photographs. And this is also another important topic that, when you start a tenancy, you must have a good inventory, because you're saying that the mould wasn't there at the start of the tenancy, but have you got a good inventory to prove that? And I might be sounding a bit, like, I'm getting a bit worried about it, but it's a big topic at the minute, and landlords really need to protect themselves, because, tenants are, they're finding a bit of black mould, they're reporting it, and, and it likely is down to them.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe not. But
just to add to that, it fascinates me with mould, and I see lots of cases, and I go to lots of houses where I've been asked to go and look at it. You never find mould in your own house. So damp and mould never seems, if you go around your own house, you never seem to see it. It's always in rental properties. And so in defence of, good landlords out there, 9 times out of 10, it is down to the tenant, and it's really simple, really simple.
I've got it in my house. I've got a teenager who's I'm sure all those parents with teenagers where they keep all the windows sealed and they don't come out of the bedroom for days.
Dries the socks on the radiator.
In a nutshell, that is the only way to deal with it, is ventilation. It's to get the air out, the damp air out of the building.
Take a window pane out, Teresa. That's the easiest thing. Just take the window pane out and then let them freeze. They'll be fine.
No, I've got a German Shepherd. They're out of the bedrooms now.
Oh, okay. Maybe don't take the window pane out.
That's your puppy.
So, I'm going to throw another one at Ross, if that's okay. RTM. What is it, and is it something that your business can help with? No,
Enlighten me.
not a clue.
Everyone's-
That's fine. Anyone else know
everyone's
what
frozen.
RTM is?
Right to manage. RTM is often referred to as right to manage, whether that's what they're talking about. But yeah, right to manage is usually cut down to RTM.
Ah,
Makes sense?
All right. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, I'll move on from that then. Let's talk about another question. So
we've only
here's a
got
question.
5 minutes. Should we go over a bit more because loads of people couldn't join?
Sure.
Five
We've got some questions.
5 more minutes. Yeah.
So got a question here. Hi, how easy and or expensive is it to get a mortgage for a short lease property which has 30, 40, 50, 60 years left on the lease? Before you answer that, Simon, anyone that has come onto this show later on, irrespective of what the reason is, you can go back to the beginning because this is now on YouTube. It's recorded, so you can rewatch it anytime. All right, so you haven't missed anything. All you need to do is just go read back. But Simon Hodgson, back to you, my friend. What can you do with a lease property for 30 to 60 years?
Wow. Okay, so if it's got that low, that it's gone below the start of the marriage value period at 80 years, typically 50 years then for me would be the next line in the sand. So if you've got 60 years unexpired, there are a few lenders out there that will allow you to take a mortgage that, as long as at the end of the mortgage term, there's still 50 years of unexpired. So on a 60-year unexpired, you could take out a 9-year term and still leave 50 years at the end of it. So potentially you can get a buy-to-let on that. If it's less than that, it's absolutely going to be short-term funding and finance, and we'll need to do an awful lot of work around showing that you have been able to get hold of the freeholder and or start the lease extension process. Clause 42, which forces the current freeholder to start that process and grant. And if you can, it would make sense to try and get the lease extension to coincide with the purchase. Not the easiest thing to do in the world, but done that way, I can get you funding that will give you 100% purchase price in general, as long as there's an uplift on the lease extension.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Can I just come in on that very quickly? Normally, the government introduced the lease extension legislation to allow people basically, so leases didn't run out, and you can't guarantee it, but in principle, you should normally expect that the money you put into a lease extension, in normal terms, in very rough guess, you should normally end up with more back in terms of the increased value of your property. It's a legal issue, but yeah, 30 years down, that you must get your lease extended, otherwise you're shark bait.
Short bait. There you go. Right, let's go to the next question. This is from Vic. Is a hot tub a good idea for service accommodation or even buy to let? Try to stand out from the crowd. I mean, I love the imagination like this, and to be honest, I would definitely hire a place that's got a hot tub over something that hasn't. But from a practical sense, Ross is there again with that inquisitive look.
Ross has got one.
He shouldn't play poker, should he? It's too obvious what's going on in your mind there, Ross.
There's nothing wrong with a hot tub. Hot tubs are great, and I can see where he's coming from. To stand out from the crowd. But with a hot tub comes massive responsibility in the water quality. And if you know anything about Legionella, if you don't, again, one of my favourite topics.
Legionnaires.
I know, we could be here for hours. I would do a bit of research on Legionella control before you go into a hot tub. The guy spent a week on the road with one of the authors of the Legionella ACOP, the Approved Code of Practice, and he would not go anywhere near a hot tub. But I personally have one in my garden.
You can always tell when you're asking a very good question that Ross gets excited, because if there's a thermostat behind him, it always goes up 2-3 degrees more.
Yeah, it's warming it.
So you always know when he's excited about a particular subject. There's Wayne's asked a question: are there any barriers that turning a HMO into a service accommodation? Is there any legislation to be aware of? I've heard of potential regulations coming. There's always regulations coming. To be fair, always regulations. There isn't a day without regulations. But let's talk about that from Simon Hodgson from a mortgage perspective, and from Ross's and Bronwen's. Is there any issues with converting a HMO into a service accommodation?
Well, yeah, start off from a mortgage. You're going to need a specialist service accommodation stroke holiday let mortgage by the time you've finished it. If you've got a buy-to-let mortgage on the property and need to carry out works in order to turn it into the holiday let, first of all, you've got to ask the current lender for permission to carry out the works. If they know you're going to change its usage, chances are they'll ask you to politely leave their funding. those would be the main ones I would suggest in terms of mortgages.
Okay, Ross?
I mean, practically, to convert it, no, but from a planning point of view, you'd need to change the use, because, and Bronwen will correct me if I'm wrong, you're going from, I can't remember what C number it is, but you're going from an HMO to a guest house effectively, or a hostel type place. So probably more one for Bronwen. Practically, yeah, just be careful on fire alarms, number of toilets and that sort of thing. And then if you're serviced accommodation, they want to share a bathroom with somebody else, practical things like that. But legally, that's probably more you, Bronwen.
Yeah, I mean, there are planning rules to a point, although there are plenty of people that do it and don't really get noticed because an HMO has a lot of rooms. Service accommodation, you're going to have many more people coming and going, which may not be noticed. So it sort of sits under the radar sometimes. And there are people that even don't tell their mortgage provider, and that is a no, because they will be found out. And some lenders are actually going actively and looking. I don't know why, but they do. So do you want to be, a good investor or not? So the other things to be aware of, councils. So councils are sort of got different rules and regulations for HMOs and for serviced accommodation. In London, you can't use SA for more than so many days in a year. So they're restricting SA usage. And then you've got things like apartments that look at the lease. The lease may not allow you to change that to a serviced accommodation. I know it's not an HMO, but anyway, same difference. If you want to move into SA, you need to be aware of what the local council allows and what it doesn't allow. And parking is a complete nightmare for serviced accommodation. So unless you do what I do, which is buy a tired bed and breakfast, ideally with parking, yeah, it's going to be tricky, in my opinion, but it's not impossible. Any other views?
Tim, what about you? I mean, you're into the world of service accommodation now, aren't you? I mean, would you convert any HMOs into SA?
Not sure. I've never thought about it. Yeah, does it pay? HMOs, if they're run properly in the right area, can be profitable. Why would you want to change? Clearly, there's a financial issue, so you might do. But again, I think, as we say, in principle, there's no automatic good idea to change from one to another. As you say, Simon, it's all about the circumstances. I've got an HMO, I've got service. I'm not changing my HMO because it's set up for an HMO. Why would I want to change it?
Yeah. I'm going to leave us with this final question before we wrap things up, because it is already 1:30. But the question is, and we could be over hours to be fair, Bronwen, but it says here, this is from Tiffany Hall, who's asked on YouTube Live. So good evening, Tiffany. If you were to put an offer to the agent, do you have a rough guide of how much you would offer below market value? Would you say that there are BMV deals out there at the moment? Before I kind of hand it over to the panel members, whoever wants to chip in with this one, do feel free. But I would say this to you: if the deal stacks up, I would still bid higher than the market value. Because if the numbers stack up, why would I not put an offer in if it's gone above market value? If the numbers stack up, why wouldn't I do that? So I'm never one for looking at below market value deals. They're all over Facebook, they're all over YouTube. That's what seems to be analytics. It's such a sexy thing, but actually, why buy a property that's below market value? If it's so run down, you've got to put so much money into it. There's got to be a purpose for it to be below market value. So understand the circumstances and then still do your numbers, do it stack up. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that people put so much emphasis on it. I think they're looking at the wrong point of what property investing is all about. Bronwen, what's your views?
Yeah, Tiffany, great question, because the way you've worded the question tells me that you're looking for a below market value property, which is not really the right thing to be doing, in my opinion, because what you should, as Simon says, you've got to understand what's the return on investment that I can get with a property in this area at this sort of price. Okay, so you do your numbers and you say, right, return on investment could be 5%, 10%, 15% even. And you look at those properties and you say, right, okay, if I need to do some work on them, then the sort of price I need to be paying is around about X. Now, there are properties on the market that are much higher than X at the moment. Well, can you negotiate? Yes, you can, but only if there's a good enough reason to. So you don't, if you approach an agent and you said to an agent, I want a below market value property, they'll laugh at you because they'll think you're an amateur. What you should be doing is saying, I want something that can give me a return of about this amount for this type of strategy. Are there below market value opportunities? Yes. If there's a problem with the plumbing, or if you need to rewire that property and it's going to be significant, then you can reduce the price. If somebody needs to move quickly, or there's subsidence, or there's something that, and they have to move because they have a problem, they need the money now, then of course they will reduce the price for certainty. So you have to be certain that you can afford that you've got the cash. And so at that point you can negotiate, but you don't start with the, I want X% below, because doesn't make sense really. And it'll piss a lot of people off. Oh, technical word. Anyone else?
So, what about you, Tim? What's your views on that?
I think one very simple question I always ask the agent, well, actually, what are they looking for? What are they going to take? Because quite often the agent will know there's a bit of flexibility, in which case ask them. Equally, they might say, actually, this is the price it's going to go for. So if you ask the agent nicely, remember the agent wants to sell. And frankly, whether it's a couple of grand here and there doesn't make an awful lot of difference to their commission. They simply want that deal to go through. So I find agents pretty useful as long as you treat them nicely and you don't abuse them. Actually, just ask them, be honest. And usually they'll give you a surprisingly honest response, in my opinion.
That's it, guys. I'm going to say this is the last question that we had. So wrap us up, Bronwen.
Yes, brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. The 30th episode. So yes, an amazing birthday for us all. And apologies, yes, there was a problem with the link, but hey, we get around these problems. And yes, I know some people might be frustrated, but look, whether you're brand new to property investing and thinking about getting into this market, or whether you're long in the tooth, this is the sort of thing you should be doing more of, finding people you can talk to, finding opportunities to network. There are plenty of network events out there. The NRLA, Teresa can vouch for, has a lot of events listed on their website. So yeah, contact us individually. Book your free each with me if you want to progress or come back to some of the questions maybe we haven't answered. More than happy to do that, and I'll signpost you to all of these wonderful people and others if needs be. So thank you for joining us. We will be holding another session. We haven't agreed what the date is yet, probably in a couple of months' time, but watch this space. And congratulations to the panel members who have had puppies. Sorry, they have bought puppies. It's becoming a bit of a trend. So I think Tim was first, isn't it? And then Simon Misiewicz, and now Teresa. So there we go. That's half of us. Oh, and Ross's son also has just got a puppy. So there we are. I'm not getting a puppy.
I'm getting lobbied very hard at the moment for a puppy.
Okay. All right. We'll have a little puppy fest at the beginning of next session, all right, just so that we can be ready for that.
Right.
So thank you very much, everybody. Please keep in touch and good luck with your investing. It's going to be a brilliant year.